Captain Lee stared at the control panel as warning lights flashed across the screen. His small merchant ship shook violently. "What's happening?" He called to his computer system. "Unknown spatial anomaly ahead. Gravitational pull increasing. Unable to alter course." Lee grabbed the manual controls, fighting against the invisible force dragging his ship forward. The stars outside blurred into streaks of light as his vessel accelerated toward what appeared to be a swirling distortion in space. "Wormhole detected," the computer announced. "Preparing for transit." Lee braced himself. The ship plunged into the vortex, metal groaning under the strain. For several terrifying moments, reality itself seemed to bend around him. Then, with a final lurch, the ship emerged into unfamiliar space. Lee checked his navigation system. None of the star patterns matched known Earth charts. His heart sank. The wormhole had taken him somewhere far beyond mapped space. Scanning for habitable systems, the computer said. "One detected within range. Planet shows signs of advanced civilization." With few options, Lee set course for the planet. As he approached, his sensors detected multiple spacecraft moving in formation. Before he could change direction, his ship was surrounded by sleek, silver vessels 3 times the size of his own. A communication request flashed on his screen. When he accepted, Lee found himself facing a tall, muscular woman with striking blue markings that seemed to glow beneath her skin. She wore what appeared to be military armor. "Unidentified vessel," she said in a surprisingly clear translation. "You have entered Valadorian space. Identify yourself." "Captain Lee of Earth," he replied. "My ship was pulled through a wormhole. I mean no harm." The woman's eyes widened slightly. "Earth. We have no record of this world. You will be escorted to our primary station for examination." A tractor beam locked onto his ship. Lee considered his options, but resistance seemed pointless. He allowed his ship to be guided toward a massive space station orbiting the planet. Upon docking, Lee was met by 6 guards. Each stood nearly 7 feet tall with the same glowing markings as the woman from the communication. All were female, powerfully built, and carried energy weapons. "Follow us," the lead guard ordered. "The High Council wishes to see you." Lee was led through curved corridors filled with Valadorians. He noticed something odd. All the warriors and officials were female. The few males he saw were smaller and dressed in simple clothing, performing service tasks. The council chamber was a vast circular room. 5 women sat on elevated platforms, their armor more elaborate than the guards. Their skin markings glowed with greater intensity. "I am High Counselor Maya," said the central figure. "You claim to be from Earth. Explain how you reached our system." Lee described Earth and how his ship had been pulled through the wormhole. As he spoke, he noticed the counselors exchanging surprised glances. "You pilot your own vessel?" asked another counselor. "You make decisions of travel and trade without female oversight?" "Yes," Lee replied, confused. "On Earth, both men and women serve as captains." "Show us your strength," she commanded. A guard stepped forward with a device. "This measures physical capability," she explained, handing it to Lee. Lee gripped the handle and squeezed. The device glowed, registering his strength. The council studied the readings with interest. "Impressive for your size," said Maya. "Now, a test of mind." A holographic puzzle appeared before him. Lee solved it quickly, his years of navigating space giving him good spatial reasoning. He combined strength with intelligence, one counselor whispered, and claims leadership status. The High Counselor stood. "Captain Lee of Earth, you present us with something unprecedented. Your species develops technology independently, yet appears physically similar to us. Your social structure contradicts our most basic understanding of natural order." A tall woman with elaborate golden markings entered the chamber. The counselors all bowed their heads. "War Queen Hana," announced Maya. "We present the alien captain." Hana approached Lee slowly, studying him. Her eyes had an intensity that made Lee uncomfortable. "I have watched the examination," she said. You interest me, Earthman. You will stay as our guest while we learn more about your world. I need to return to Earth, Lee protested. My people will be looking for me. Hana smiled. In time, perhaps. First, you will teach us about humans, and we will show you the glory of Valadoria. Lee noticed how the other women now looked at him, with curiosity and something else he couldn't quite identify. Whatever had happened, he realized his arrival had created a stir in their society. Prepare quarters for our guest, Hana ordered. The Earthman has much to share with us. Lee had the unsettling feeling that getting home had just become much more complicated. Lee sat in his assigned quarters, staring out at the vast Valadorian cityscape through the window. After a week on the space station, he had been moved to the planet's surface. His room was spacious but clearly designed for someone larger than himself. A chime sounded at his door. Enter, he called. A male Valadorian entered carrying fresh clothing. He kept his eyes downcast as he placed the items on a table. Thank you, Lee said. What's your name? The male looked startled. I am Jun, honored visitor. Jun, can you tell me more about how your society works? The roles of men and women here seem very different from Earth. Jun glanced nervously at the door. It is not my place to instruct you. War Queen Hana will arrive soon to escort you to the training grounds. She will answer your questions. After Jun left, Lee changed into the provided clothing. A fitted tunic with symbols he didn't recognize. Soon another chime announced Hana's arrival. The War Queen stood in his doorway, impressive in her formal armor. The golden markings on her skin pulsed slightly. You look well in Valadorian colors, she noted. Come. Today you will observe our warriors in training. As they walked through the city, Lee noticed how other Valadorians reacted to them. Females nodded respectfully to Hana, while males quickly moved aside, heads bowed. On Earth, Lee said, men and women have equal status. We don't separate roles by gender. Hana looked at him with surprise. How can this work? Males lack the physical strength and temperament for leadership and protection. Human males and females are more similar in strength than your people seem to be. But even so, we value different kinds of strength, intelligence, compassion, creativity. Hana considered this as they reached the training grounds, a massive open area where dozens of female warriors practiced combat with energy weapons and hand-to-hand techniques. Demonstrate your earth fighting methods, Hana commanded. Lee hesitated. I'm not a soldier. I'm a merchant captain. Yet you have combat training. This caused a stir among the Valadorians. The High Counselor raised her hand for silence. Basic self-defense, yes. Hana called over a young warrior. Ju will test your skills. Ju stepped forward, nearly a foot taller than Lee. She took a fighting stance. Lee sighed and prepared himself. When Ju attacked, he used her momentum against her, redirecting her strength with minimal effort. The surprised warrior found herself flipped onto her back. Murmurs spread through the watching crowd. Ju jumped to her feet, embarrassed and angry. She attacked again, more cautiously. Lee blocked and dodged, using technique to counter her superior strength. After several minutes, Hana raised her hand. Enough. That was judo and aikido, Lee explained. Earth martial arts based on balance and leverage, not just power. Fascinating, Hana said. You turn weakness into strength. As they continued the tour, Lee noticed a group of warriors watching him intently. Why are they staring? He asked. Hana smiled slightly. You have created quite a stir among my warriors. A male who captains his own vessel, makes decisions, and fights with skill is unusual. Some find it intriguing. Intriguing how? In our culture, females choose mates based on genetic compatibility and status. Your different abilities might offer new strengths to our bloodlines. Lee stopped walking. Wait. They're considering me as a potential mate. Several have already approached me about claiming rights, Hana confirmed. I denied them thus far. As our first contact with humans, you represent a diplomatic opportunity. Lee felt suddenly uncomfortable. On Earth, marriage is a partnership between equals who choose each other. Nobody claims anyone. This concept seemed to surprise Hannah. Choice by both parties? How inefficient. But more fair, Lee countered. And it leads to stronger bonds. Their conversation was interrupted by an official who approached with urgent news. Hannah's expression darkened as she listened. What's wrong? Lee asked when they were alone again. The council is divided on how to proceed with Earth relations. Some see opportunity for alliance. Others fear your different values might disrupt our social order. She looked at him seriously. Particularly your ideas about male authority and mutual choosing of mates. I'm not trying to change your culture, Lee said. Yet your mere presence changes things, Hannah replied. Already, some younger warriors question our traditions after hearing about Earthways. That evening, Lee received a message on his communication device. It was from Sue, one of the elite warriors he'd met earlier. Earth Captain. The message read, I wish to learn more about your fighting techniques and your world's partnership customs. Would you share this knowledge? Before Lee could reply, another message arrived from Yuna, then another from Jin. Lee realized the situation was growing complicated. Not only was he stranded in an alien society with vastly different gender roles, but he had apparently become the focus of attention for several high-ranking warriors. And based on what Hannah had told him, their interest wasn't purely diplomatic. Lee stood before the High Council, struggling to keep his composure. This tournament is unnecessary. On Earth, we don't determine relationships through combat. The 5 counselors exchanged glances. High Counselor Maya leaned forward. Captain Lee, we understand your concerns. However, the interest in you has created an unprecedented situation. 5 of our highest-ranking warriors have expressed formal interest in claiming you as mate. That's exactly the problem, Lee said. I'm not something to be claimed. Humans choose their partners based on mutual attraction and compatibility. War Queen Hannah, standing to the side of the council chamber, stepped forward. Perhaps the Earthman means we must prove ourselves worthy through these trials. He does not accept mere rank as sufficient qualification. Lee started to object, but Counselor Maya nodded thoughtfully. Yes, this makes sense. The tournament will proceed, but with new purpose, to demonstrate worthiness to the Earthman. That's not what Lee began. The challengers will present themselves, Maya announced, cutting him off. 5 female warriors entered the chamber and formed a line. Lee recognized them all from his time on Valadoria. Hannah stepped forward first. Her golden markings pulsed with intensity. I am War Queen Hannah, Supreme Commander of Valadoria's forces. I claim right of challenge to win the Earthmen's favor. Next came a slender warrior with dark blue markings. I am Sue, Master of Stealth and Intelligence Operations. I claim right of challenge. The third warrior carried an ornate staff. I am Yuna, Keeper of Ancient Weapons and Combat Traditions. I claim right of challenge. The fourth stood tall with elaborate armor. I am Jin, Battle Strategist and Tactical Advisor to the High Council. I claim right of challenge. The final warrior appeared younger than the others, her markings less elaborate. I am Un of the Outer Territories. Though my clan is small, I claim equal right of challenge. This caused murmurs among the spectators. Lee guessed that Yun's participation was unusual. Maya stood. The tournament will begin tomorrow. Each challenger will demonstrate their worthiness through 5 trials: strength, skill, intelligence, leadership, and 1 challenge of the Earthmen's choosing. All eyes turned to Lee. He realized they were waiting for him to name the 5th challenge. Lee thought quickly. If he couldn't stop this tournament, perhaps he could use it to change their understanding. The 5th challenge will test compassion, he announced. The word didn't translate immediately. The Valadorians looked confused until their translation systems adjusted. Explain this concept, Maya requested. Compassion is understanding others' suffering and acting to relieve it. On Earth, it's considered as important as strength or intelligence. The warriors exchanged uncertain glances. This clearly wasn't a quality they typically tested in competition. "Very well," Maya declared. "The tournament begins at first light." After the council session, Lee was approached by Yun, the youngest challenger. "Earthman," she said, "my clan is small but proud. The others mock my challenge, but I seek to prove that status should be earned, not inherited." "I understand wanting to prove yourself," Lee replied, "but this tournament isn't the way to." "I have studied your earth fighting techniques secretly," she interrupted. "I believe your people's wisdom has value. If I win, I would not simply claim you but learn from you." Before Lee could respond, Jin approached. "The young one bothers you. Allow me to escort you to your quarters." "He's fine with me," Yun said defensively. "A war queen's advisor is more suitable company than an outer territories warrior," Jin replied coolly. The Lee raised his hands. "Please, both of you. On Earth, I decide for myself who I speak with." Both warriors looked surprised. Then Jin nodded slowly. "Another Earth custom we must learn. I look forward to tomorrow's challenges." She walked away with dignity. That night, Lee received a visit from Su. The stealth warrior appeared in his room without using the door. "How did you get in?" Lee asked, startled. "I have many skills," she said simply. "I came to understand what qualities you value in a mate. The others will use traditional approaches. I prefer to adapt." "This tournament is a misunderstanding," Lee explained. "I'm not looking for a mate among your people." Su tilted her head. "Yet your heart rate increases when we speak. Humans are not so different physically from Valadorians." Lee changed the subject. "Why is this tournament so important to all of you?" "The first union between our species would bring great honor," Su explained. "And you are unusual. A male who leads, fights, and speaks as an equal. Some find this attractive." After Su left, Lee sat by the window, watching the city lights. Tomorrow, 5 of the most powerful warriors on Valadoria would compete for him, despite his objections. He needed to find a way to turn this tournament into a lesson about human values, and somehow use it to get back to Earth. The first day of the tournament drew massive crowds. Lee watched from a special platform beside the High Council as the 5 challengers entered the arena. Each wore ceremonial armor displaying their rank and achievements. "The strength trial begins," announced Counselor Maya. The warriors faced a series of physical challenges, lifting massive stone blocks, breaking reinforced barriers, and enduring pain tests. Hana, as War Queen, dominated this trial with her superior strength. Yun, the youngest challenger, struggled but showed remarkable determination. When all 5 had completed the challenges, Lee was asked to comment. "Impressive," he said, then added carefully, "On Earth, we value different types of strength too. Not just physical power, but mental and emotional resilience." The counselors exchanged curious glances, but made no comment. The second day brought the skill trial. Each warrior demonstrated mastery of various weapons and combat techniques. Yuna, the weapons master, excelled here. Her movements were precise and deadly. During a break, Lee approached Maya. "I'd like to suggest additions to tomorrow's intelligence trial." "Explain," she said. "Instead of just solving problems alone, include challenges where the warriors must work together." Maya frowned. "That contradicts the purpose of determining a single victor. On Earth, we find that cooperation often produces better results than competition." Lee explained. "It might be interesting to see how your warriors adapt." After consideration, Mia agreed. That night, Lee secretly activated the emergency beacon in his quarters. If Earth ships were searching for him, they might detect the signal. He knew it was risky, but he needed to establish contact with his people. The intelligence trial the next day began traditionally, with complex puzzles and strategic challenges. Jin, the tactical advisor, solved these effortlessly. Then came Lee's addition, a problem that required all 5 warriors to collaborate. Initially, they hesitated, confused by the concept of working with rivals. Gradually, under Jin's organization and Su's creative thinking, they began to coordinate efforts. Together, they completed the challenge faster than any could have alone. An interesting approach, Maya noted to Lee. Though it doesn't help us determine a winner. Sometimes winning means finding a better solution than simply defeating others, Lee replied. The leadership trial on the 4th day required each warrior to command a small team through a simulated crisis. Hana's direct authority, Jin's strategic planning, and surprisingly, Yun's innovative approach all showed different leadership styles. After observing, Lee addressed the warriors. Leadership on Earth isn't just giving orders. It's inspiring others, listening to different perspectives, and adapting to change. That evening, an official rushed into Lee's quarters. The War Queen requests your immediate presence in the command center. When Lee arrived, he found the Valadorian leaders staring at a holographic display showing multiple ships approaching their system. Your people have found you, Hana said tensely. They come with warships. Lee studied the display. Those are Earth vessels, but they're not here for war. They're a search party. They enter our space unannounced, heavily armed, Hana countered. Our defense fleet is mobilizing. Please, Lee urged, let me contact them before this escalates. After a heated debate among the council, they allowed Lee to send a message. The Earth Fleet commander appeared on screen. Captain Lee, are you being held prisoner? No, Commander Park. There's been a misunderstanding. The Valadorians rescued me after the wormhole incident. Hana stepped into view. Your ships must halt their approach. This is sovereign Valadorian space. Commander Park's expression hardened. We've come for our citizen. Lee saw the situation deteriorating. I have a proposal, he announced to both sides. The tournament's final challenge, compassion, should include representatives from Earth. Let's make it a cultural exchange rather than a confrontation. A competition between our species, Hana asked. Not a competition, a collaboration, Lee clarified. Earth and Valadoria working together to solve problems neither could alone. The council debated intensely before finally agreeing. The next day, several Earth representatives joined the Valadorians in the arena. The Compassion Challenge involved helping communities affected by a recent natural disaster in Valadoria's outer territories. The Valadorian warriors were confused by the Earth team's approach, focusing on emotional support alongside practical aid, treating males and females equally, and including children in decision-making. Most surprising to the Valadorians was the presence of female Earth officers giving orders and male Earth doctors providing care. This contradicted everything in their social structure. Your females command. Your males heal. Yun asked an Earth officer in wonder. We assign roles based on ability and interest, not gender, the officer explained. By day's end, the combined Earth-Valadorian effort had accomplished more than either group could have separately. The High Council observed with growing interest as their warriors adapted to the Earth methods, incorporating new ideas into their traditional approaches. That night, Lee met with both Earth and Valadorian leaders. Tomorrow is the tournament's conclusion, he said. But I think we've already discovered something more valuable than determining a winner. The grand arena was filled beyond capacity for the tournament's final day. Valadorians from across the planet had gathered to witness the conclusion of this unprecedented event. The 5 challengers stood in formation, their ceremonial armor gleaming in the morning light. High Counselor Maya rose from her seat. Today we determine who has proven most worthy to claim the Earthman. Commander Park of the Earth Fleet, seated beside Lee, leaned over. We can still extract you if needed. The ships are ready. Lee shook his head slightly. Trust me. I think we're about to make history in a different way. Maya continued. Before we announce the tournament results, Captain Lee has requested to address the assembly. Lee walked to the center of the arena. The crowd fell silent. People of Valadoria, he began, Your warriors have shown incredible strength, skill, intelligence, leadership, and yes, even compassion. But I cannot choose a winner because Earth does not practice claiming mates through combat or competition. Murmurs spread through the crowd. Lee raised his hand. Instead, I propose something more valuable than a marriage between one human and one Valadorian. I propose an alliance between our worlds. The High Council members exchanged glances as Lee continued. Earth and Valadoria have different cultures, different values, different ways of organizing our societies. But in the past few days, we've seen how much stronger we can be when we learn from each other. Lee gestured toward the Earth delegation. My people value individual choice, equality regardless of gender, and cooperation alongside competition. Your people value tradition, strength, and clear social structures. Neither approach is completely right or wrong. They're just different paths our species have taken. Hannah stepped forward. What form would this alliance take, if not through the traditional claiming? A cultural and knowledge exchange, Lee suggested. Earth representatives would stay on Valadoria to learn your ways, and Valadorian representatives would visit Earth. We would share technology, art, philosophy, everything that makes our civilizations unique. The counselors conferred quietly among themselves. Finally, Maya addressed the crowd. The tournament has no precedent in our history. Perhaps its conclusion should also break with tradition. She turned to the 5 challengers. What say you who sought to claim the Earthman? Jin spoke first. I entered this tournament seeking honor for my lineage. But I have learned that there are forms of honor beyond our traditional understanding. Sue nodded. The Earthmen's ways are strange but compelling. I would learn more of them. Yuna struck her staff against the ground. Our ancient traditions teach that we must adapt or perish. This alliance may be the adaptation our people need. Im stepped forward eagerly. My clan has always believed that change brings strength. I support this new path. All eyes turned to Hannah. As War Queen, her opinion carried the most weight. For generations, she said slowly, Valadoria has conquered or dominated other species. We have never considered them equals. She looked at Lee. But Earth challenges us in ways no other civilization has. They are physically smaller, yet they've developed impressive technology. Their social structure contradicts our most basic beliefs, yet they have traveled the stars. Perhaps it is time we learned instead of claimed. Maya raised her hands. It is decided. The tournament concludes not with a claiming, but with an alliance. Captain Lee will return to Earth as our ambassador, accompanied by a Valadorian representative who will learn Earth customs. I volunteer, Hannah announced, surprising everyone. As War Queen, I should understand potential allies, or enemies, personally. The ceremony that followed formalized the agreement. Both Earth and Valadorian officials signed the treaty amid celebrations from both delegations. Later, as Lee prepared to board the Earth vessel for the journey home, Yun approached him. You changed everything, she said. Our society has remained the same for thousands of years. Now, in mere days, you've opened us to new possibilities. Change was already coming, Lee replied. I just helped it along. Hannah joined them, now dressed in simplified armor suitable for travel. The High Council has approved the exchange program. 20 warriors will prepare to visit Earth in the coming months. And Earth is ready to welcome them, Lee assured her. As they boarded the ship, Lee looked back at the Valadorian cityscape gleaming in the distance. What had begun as an accidental journey through a wormhole had transformed into a first contact that would change 2 civilizations. Hannah stood beside him at the viewport. Your Earth saying about marriage, till death do us part. Perhaps it applies better to alliances between worlds. Lee smiled. Perhaps it does. Though I notice several of your warriors seem very interested in visiting Earth, specifically to learn about our partnership customs. Can you blame them? Hannah asked with rare humor. A society where one chooses rather than claims, where strength takes many forms. These are revolutionary ideas for us. As the ship broke orbit, Lee wondered what other surprises waited as these two very different cultures began their journey together.